Good afternoon. My name is Roman Peperhove from the research firm on public safety and security. Is it on?
No, what's on?
It works. Oh, it really works. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, once again. My name is Roman Peperhove from the research firm on public safety and security. We are located at the Freie Universität Berlin, and coming back from war, from Cold War, hot war, I'm going to talk about civil protection and crisis management on a national level. And I would like to at least try to suggest a solution for all the problems which are mentioned already during this session. But by the way, you lied a little bit because you already presented a kind of solution at the end when you talked about the imagination gap. So the next couple of minutes I will try to talk at double speed because we want to end, I think, already in 20 minutes when the program is. Okay. So just for the background to understand why I'm talking about this, we are doing knowledge transfer from civil security and civil security research to try to transfer this knowledge to decision makers in politics, emergency management, administration, first responder organization, and something like that. And I would like to talk to you about something which is perhaps not that new, but I think very important. Because as you all know, everyone who's talking about the future has a problem that people say, yeah, might be important, but they don't really get it, or they don't really have a good perception what it really would mean if something like that we are talking about materializes. So this is true not only for ordinary people, but also for decision makers as well. So, and I think this is a serious problem when it comes to preparation, prevention, mitigation of impact and something like that in civil protection. So what are the consequences of this, and what are the data I'm backing this argument up with? Because what we did is we did a research for the Federal Ministry of the Interior, to be exactly the Federal Office for Civil Protection and Disaster Assistance within the Federal Ministry of Interior. And we did a research and tried to ask the question, why isn't there more knowledge about crisis prevention? Why isn't there more preventive action and political discussion? And what we did 15 interviews with members of the German Bundestag, the parliament. And we asked a lot of questions, but our main question was to understand how they perceive risks and how they discuss crisis management and crisis prevention risks within the political arena. So we did the interviews with people from 5 different fractions, and most of them were in the Home Affairs Committee, so the people who are responsible for this task. And what we found, first of all, were a very detailed description how they work from day to day. And I think this is very similar to a lot of people who have to make decisions, so it's no surprise, but it's very good to have that in the back of your mind when you see the rest of the presentation. So they are constantly in a time pressure, they work very long hours, they have to work on on very different topics at the same time. They are, let's say, bombarded, to say it in the military words, bombarded with information from different sources at the same time. And so this way it's not really surprising that they have to select information and that they have to prioritize information. And what we try to understand is the fact that they didn't choose the future risks. So they talked a lot of different other things, but they never talked about the problems we will have in the future with crisis prevention. So what we learned from the results is that we have seen, I tried to translate it, the German term Betroffenheit, that it needs a kind of relation or emotional involvement to understand what the risk really would mean. This was a kind of surprising because we thought in the professional arena of politicians, they would have already an understanding what the results would be and what the impact could look like. So we learned that the less involved the people were with the risks we presented to them, or which were presented in official documents, the less they thought it was a relevant problem. It's for them it stayed rather theoretical, something which could happen in the future, but the less they were involved, they felt that there is less importance to react and to discuss it and to look for solutions. So we know from research and literature that when it comes to communication, especially when it comes to science communication, which is usually a little bit more complex when it comes to terms and something like that, the communication should always be very easy to digest, very easy to understand, in a very nice way presented, so that it makes no problem for the decision maker to understand it. And what I like very much is a statement, I think from Peperhove and Davis, who said, and I have to quote that, science communication is driven by what audiences need to know, not by what scientists want to say. I think this is true for a lot of different environments, when people want to say, but this is also important, this is also important, and this is also important. And the people in the end might be more, I don't know, confused than they know what they have to do. So to sum it up, this part, we have seen that the less they feel involved in the risk and the description of a risk, if there's a lack of imagination, a lack of emotional concern, that they perceive a risk, a future risk, as less important to think about that in politics and to look for decisions. So it looks like that it's necessary to have a kind of a problem broker or a policy entrepreneur who's trying to bring all the relevant information together in the first step, and in the second step, try to translate the knowledge to the decision maker in a way they can understand and relate to. So what we did this. We have tried to do that in a way which is very easy to understand. And for that reason, we learned in the past with our first project that it's better to be as close as possible to the decision maker, in our term here, to the German parliament. So on the left side, you see the Einstein Center Digital Future, which is on the other side of the street where the offices of the members of the parliaments are. So it's not possible to be closer than this. So for them, it's very easy to access us there. We implemented in the first floor the so-called Future Security Lab. And I'm going to present our concept and our idea during the next few minutes as quickly as possible. Since we have this very good location, which we found there, and we're very happy to be there, we offer them a way to have a very low-level chance to contact us, to come to us, and to see what's happening in research and in the future regarding risks in crisis prevention. So we are using the instrument of narrative scenarios, and I'm glad that some of the people who are specialized in that are in the room right now. And for us, a narrative is on a very basic level, is a story with people, with the beginning and end, and where it's possible to add to the facts which are already there from future research, from security research, and to bring it all together in a way that it's possible for the people who are able to hear the story or to read a story to immerse into it. I think that's very important fact if we are trying to bring the facts on the one hand together with the emotions on the second hand. And only if both comes together, it's easy for them, or let's say easier for them, to understand the impact of the future risks. And now I want to show you only on a few slides how we are doing that. So you are reading here a typical start of one of our scenarios. As you can see by the year which is mentioned in the heading, our scenarios are usually within the next 5 to 10 years. So we are not talking about the next 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, but only about the next 5 to 10 years. Because on the one hand, the security research results are meant to become praxis or to become implemented within the next few years. And the second is, what we've learned is if a scenario takes place in a very far future, the people are easier to disrupt, or that they are not interested anymore because I think I'm not in charge in 20 years, I'm not in charge in 40 years or something like that. So we use such a short introduction to give them some time to orient themselves within the room and to find into the scenario and the idea of the whole concept. So afterwards, what we are doing within the room is we try to combine very different things. As you can see here on the table. On the one hand, we have a storyline, which is here very shortened, but we have a storyline, we tell a story, like the narrative scenario. At the same time, we are presenting to them our assessment of future risks, what might happen in the future. But we don't only tell them the future risk and frighten them by the risk, but we are trying to show them ideas for solutions as well. So using the security research, which is ongoing, which comes up with very innovative ideas on technical solutions, organizational solutions, and so on, we are trying to bring that all together using very different equipment. So, for example, during a presentation of 20 minutes, we would use perhaps virtual reality sequences. We would use augmented reality gadgets like, I don't know, smart firefighter clothes or something like that, in order to give them the chance to understand what is the stress and the problem and the social disruption and so on, which might come with a risk here. For example, a flood or an earthquake or a big fire or a terrorist attack or something like that. So, and we are using all the different displays at the same time to bring the whole room in a kind of closer to realistic scenario, talking all the time about the narrative. So we are trying to bring all this together to have a kind of story, including scientific results and scientific innovations. You see here, to come to an end, some impressions of the room, and which is very interesting because it's a very old building and it's forbidden to change something. So we are talking about the future in the building, I don't know, from the 18th century or so, I don't know exactly. But for them it's very interesting to see, and especially when it comes to testing the exhibits. If they're able to use simulations, for example, if they can touch something, we also have serious games and so on. And so for them, I think when it comes to the impact of the narrative scenarios, it's very important to have not only the emotions and the facts, but also the interaction with the exhibits and to understand why it's important to think about that. This is only the literature. I don't know if it's available on the website, but if you're interested in that, you can read it. Okay, to sum it up, at least from our or my opinion, I think it's very necessary when we are trying to convince decision makers in the future to think about the future, that we should bring together, on the one hand, the facts, which are already there, but to combine them in a way that they have at least a chance to attach to the risk in one way or another on an emotional level, that they feel attached to it, that they understand why is it relevant to talk about that, because at least from our experiences, this is necessary to convince them to put all their energy in the very difficult problem to put that on a political agenda, because civil protection in Germany is not a very popular topic, and every party or every fraction within the German parliament has more popular topics on the agenda. So the first problem is to convince your colleagues that it's important. Afterwards, you have to convince the other parties to talk about that. And that is why it's often neglected on the on the agenda. And so what we are trying to do is with our narrative scenarios in the Future Security Lab to bring different ideas and different concepts together in a way that it's easy for the visitors to understand. And we hope that it's better than only presenting hard facts, because once I read a very interesting sentence where the author stated that problems won't be, there are no solutions for problems only by data and statistic regression, but only by ideas. And I think what we are trying to do here is to put the seed of an idea in the head of a decision maker with the hope that it grows and brings some impact into the discussion. So thank you very much for listening, and this was our idea of Future Security Lab. Any questions? Yes, please. Or I don't know who was first.
What you present to your audience. That, I think, is the major question that I have for you. So Olaf said, well, we are not into the business of policy making. We are just presenting scenarios. We are just presenting these trends, this and that, and then they have to decide. But of course, if you do it like this, you are nudging them in a particular direction. This is not, so to speak, absolutely neutral or objective. It cannot be. And the same is true for you, I guess. What makes you choose the risk that you present to the policymakers, to the MPs in this case, when you have to, I don't know, maybe you tell them, well, we have the risk to show you here, so you can come here and we'll show you the risk. And that, of course, has a lot to do with responsibility and accountability as well. So, what are the standards for responsibility and for choosing the risk that you that you are trying to get the attention of policymakers to? And how are your processes for being accountable for what you do? Because, Roman, you said it in the end, the facts are already there. But, choosing fact is a very complicated issue. It's not or to put it differently, there are so many facts out there that we always have to choose which facts or AKA risk you are trying to present. And it's the same with the scenarios of warfare.
I can answer this question, of course, in only one sentence. No, I think it's a perfect question and very relevant. And we thought about that as well. So how we select our risks is we are looking on the one hand on literature, research, and what's going on there. What are the issues which are discussed within the experts? On the other hand, we also ask our members of the parliament, which we have connections to, and ask what are the questions you are talking about, what you are interested in. So we try to bring that together, and to be honest, facts are not always only facts. Also facts are able to interpret and to discuss and to, I don't know, put them in another way together with a very different result. What we are trying to do to be as neutral as possible, so to say, to not only envision a dark side, but also bring in the ideas, for example, of social cohesion, of helping each other, and not only emphasize the attack or the natural disaster or something, and present without any critic the most technological solutions. We are trying to show as well the social dimensions and the problems which might come with implementing these technologies. But to be honest again, it's much more difficult to explain and to show, to visualize the social dimension of a problem and of a solution in comparison to a technology, a gadget or something like that. But what we at least try is to bring all the different aspects together. But there's never a perfect solution, but we are aware of that, and we try to be as accountable as possible within the process. I don't know, Olaf Thal, you want to answer as well?
We need
Okay.
to get to the
Oh,
last speaker.
sorry.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
well, you're all giving up a part of your lunch, your coffee, you hope.
Thank you very much.
Just the way it is, okay?